And I will be announcing the keynote speaker. I had the privilege of hearing our first keynote speaker speak in 2019 at the Industry Collaborative Workshop on Therapeutic Development in FSHD. Since being diagnosed at the age of 12, Lexi Pappas has emerged as a powerful voice in patient advocacy and activism in FSHD. Coming from a family where multiple members from multiple generations have been affected by this disease, Ms. Pappas has shared their experience through her blog, Living with FSHD, and her documentary entitled Growing Up with FSHD, which she produced during her high school and college years. As a video producer, editor, and documentarian, she provides an honest, impactful, and also relatable look into her patient experience. And we welcome her as our first keynote speaker today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lexi Pappas. I'm 28 years old, and I have FSHD. And thank you for that introduction, by the way. It was great. Before I begin, I just want to say thank you to the FSHD Society for allowing me to speak today and to show you all the patient perspective. Living with FSHD isn't easy, but I've met so many other people with FSHD along the way, and I hope to share some of their perspectives throughout my presentation as well. The FSHD community is one of the most welcoming and supportive communities I've ever been a part of. It would be difficult to cope with FSHD without them. So as my introduction said, FSHD is genetic in my family, which I think actually makes me lucky. That sounds weird, but I've met way too many people with FSHD who have lived most of their lives without ever meeting another person with FSHD. So that's, I couldn't imagine going through this alone, which is why I'm so thankful there are events like, the Connect conference this weekend, where those people can finally meet others living with the same disability. So like I said, I was lucky enough to grow up with 3 other family members going through a similar experience. My mom, her brother, and their father all had/have FSHD. My grandpa actually passed away in 2016 due to complications from FSHD, but he did live a long life all the way till 85. Hearing about how FSHD affected my family helped me to cope with it every day, and I think that made the diagnosis part a little less scary. I remember when I was 10 years old and I was doing gymnastics. I had no clue that my muscles were very slowly starting to weaken. There was actually one move on the bars that I really couldn't do as easily as the other girls, which is actually funny. I have a video of it. My mom used to record my my gymnastics meets. So it's, you can tell, obviously I could do it, but not as easily as the other girls. And that was really the first ever symptom, I don't know if it was really a symptom, but the first ever sign of FSHD that my mom got. And, eventually that led me to not long after quit gymnastics because I just couldn't, I was stagnant in my level. You move up in gymnastics in levels, and I just couldn't move up like the other girls, so I ended up having to quit. Sorry, this is a little out of order. A few years later, I tried out for the middle school field hockey team, and when it came time to do a timed sprint, I was the slowest of every girl there. And that's when I really started to notice this disability was affecting me. That same year, my scapula bone started to wing, and from there I became slower and slower, and things started to become more difficult. By 10th grade, I could no longer run, and I started to develop some back pain. By college, it was difficult for me to walk across campus, and I was constantly falling while walking. Now, I can barely walk upstairs. The pain in my neck is 24/7, and the falling is getting dangerous. Just a few weeks ago, while I was walking outside, I fell. And for the first time, I was unable to brace myself, and I fell into the ground face first. My nose was bleeding, and I was scared it was broken. Luckily, it was just badly bruised, but this instance definitely scared me. I just feared this happening again, only the outcome would be, so much worse. Even my mom recently fell and broke her leg. So, I'm not the only one that lives with this fear. I know so many other people with FSHD who have to carefully watch every step that they take to ensure their safety, which is just another thing that we have to worry about, on a daily basis. FSHD is an everyday adjustment. There's a lot of misinformation about it, from people with it and people who know about it. And although most people would, call FSHD a slow progressing disease, for me, I feel like there's really no getting used to it. I wake up every morning and I'm in pain as soon as I get out of bed until I get back into bed at night. Everything I do throughout the day is affected by FSHD, whether it's bending over the sink to brush my teeth, trying to get food out of upper cabinets, getting out of a small car, walking on the ice during the winter. There's no getting used to chronic pain and daily muscle deterioration. And honestly, I wouldn't call it a slow progressing disease. In a matter of 6 years, I went from having no symptoms at all to not being able to run at all. And the ability to run is a pretty big part of someone's life, and especially just losing that just in 6 years is a pretty, drastic change in your life. So, the ability to run can be a huge part of someone's life, especially when your favorite thing to do is play sports. So I actually have some videos that I, wanted to show to compare kind of the 5 years ago to now. The 2017 was from my documentary I made about my family, and you can see, just walking upstairs, on the left side is, like I said, 2017, and that's now. That was just the other day. In this clip, I go up the stairs one step at a time, but in this one, I show kind of like how in 2017, I was able to walk up very easily, didn't really have any difficulty, and now trying to, walk up the stairs normally is just very difficult. And stairs is something that you encounter a lot. So that's me walking up the stairs. Obviously, at the end, it's hard because I have nothing to really hold on to. Then just showing, picking up something from off the ground. In 2017, it was, pretty easy. You can tell, how slow it became. Getting up from picking something up to getting back up was a lot slower and more difficult, and even actually painful. And then one more thing, just getting up off the ground, which is something that I think a lot of people find very difficult with FSHD, just because, I feel like I never want to find myself on the ground. It's just like, I try to avoid it because getting up is just very difficult. And you can see in 2017, it was a little difficult, but now it's much harder. And like I said, it's actually painful to do, just to contort my body like that and getting up. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that because I found it interesting that was exactly 5 years ago, and then this is now. And it's just kind of crazy. It makes me kind of sad to look at those videos. Because, how was that only 5 years ago? And things were that much easier for me. Now the stairs are a nightmare and more important than you would think because this world isn't accessible. It's not made for handicapped people, especially when you live in a city like I do, Boston, which is one of the oldest cities in the country, where businesses don't really need to have elevators or accessible entrances because they're grandfathered in or their historical landmark. It's something that creates a lot of stress, especially when your progression is constant. This speed of progression is a scary thing that, many people with FSHD have to deal with, especially those with early onset FSHD, which I think, I could be on the border of having that because my first sign of weakness came when I was about 10. And I think kids and teens with early onset are most important, or one of the most important groups of people with FSHD, especially for research, because, in order to end this disease for future generations, we need to get kids screened and get a treatment as soon as possible. because kids with early onset progress the fastest. For example, I could get a treatment right now. If I could get one that could stop my progression right now, I wouldn't need to rely on a wheelchair ever in my life. I wouldn't need an elevator everywhere I go. I wouldn't have to worry about buying a house with a second floor, which, I'm 28, so it's something I've been thinking a lot about recently, especially having kids. I'm getting married next year, so it's a lot of stress and, things you have to think about. And, I don't know, like, how much longer will I be able to walk? Like, which definitely scares me, just thinking about, how much longer I have to be able to walk and not have to rely, on a wheelchair. So it's just so crucial for so many people, like right now, to have a treatment. It would change so many people's lives, to stop progression of FSHD. But with treatment, comes clinical trials. And a few years back, I was trying to get into a clinical trial that would, could possibly change my life. But the only thing stopping me was a genetic test. And June had asked me to share this story because I think it's so important, genetic testing and how many people have had issues with it, and, that's why they're trying to make it easier for people. But because it ran in my family, I never knew that I needed a genetic test, or in the past, I didn't know that. Now I do. So they insisted, I was told to go to my primary care doctor to, order genetic tests, and so that's what I did. So they insisted they were going to help me, get it done, my primary care doctor, who doesn't really know much about FSHD, which I wouldn't recommend going to a doctor that doesn't know much about it. So I kept waiting weeks, and I would call them and ask them, how's it going? They would tell me, oh, we're trying to get in touch with your insurance and everything like that. And, I was trying to find out the progress, and it was getting closer and closer to the clinical trial closing. And then, just days before the trial would stop recruiting, my doctor called me and basically yelled at me, telling me I was wasting the nurse's time with this and that they would no longer help me. Because of that, I missed out on the opportunity of a lifetime, possibly. I wasn't able to get into that trial because my doctor decided they didn't want to help me anymore. And, that's why raising awareness about being clinical trial ready and getting easy access to genetic tests is so important, and something I'm definitely passionate about, seeing as though my experience wasn't the best. It just makes me sad that my FSHD could have possibly stopped progressing. It would have changed so much just in the last few years. I can just see the progression, like I said in that video. It would have changed a lot. But, it's not just a physical decline, it's an emotional decline too. It's common for people with FSHD to become depressed, drained, scared. It's hard too when people are constantly staring at you in public, wondering why you're different. I've even had strangers, make fun of me for the way I walk. Basically, it's like bullying, getting bullied at 28 years old. And that's been hard for me mentally. How can I feel good about myself when people are constantly bringing me down? And I'm not the only one. A lot of people with FSHD are not exactly happy with how they look. I remember I'm in a Facebook group with people with FSHD, and someone had posted on it, sometimes I look at the muscular chest of other men, and I'm like, will I ever be able to transform my body into that? It's just so upsetting, to have something so out of reach. And to me, that's just, it's upsetting because obviously physical appearance isn't the only important thing in life, but it does dramatically affect your confidence and your mental health. I've come across many people in this community who will not even post a picture of themselves because they're not happy with the way they look. Many people with FSHD cannot smile because of the lack of muscle in their face. And I just think, imagine that, not being able to smile ever. Something that most people in this world take for granted and overlook. We have one life on this earth, and I think everyone deserves to be happy with themselves. We all deserve to hug someone, to take a walk on the beach, to go for a run, and my hope is that someday soon the FSHD community will do just that, and it will be a life-changing time for all of us. I know that a significant treatment and cure is out there, and every year researchers are making huge strides in finding it. And I want to share something that I talked about a few years ago in another presentation I did, because it's something that's just always stuck with me since the day I saw it. It was another post in the FSHD Facebook group. Someone asked, when there's a cure, what is the first thing you're going to do that you can't do now? And I know how FSHD affects me and others, but to see some of the responses to that post was just really, touching. You know, the first response was smile for the world to see. Run and play with my kids with another. Give someone a hug. Walk the dog. Dance. Go for a run. It went on, and what I found so amazing about these responses was that they were everyday things that most people wouldn't even imagine, you know, having to give up. Even before I was diagnosed with FSHD, these were things I never imagined being not able to do. I think about it, you know, if you think about it, have you smiled and thought, wow, what if I could never do this again? It took me a while to realize how lucky I was that this was something I could still do. You know, these activities may seem so minimal or so trivial even, but they're everything to someone with FSHD. Before I wrap up, I just want to say again, thank you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for putting your time and effort into this cause. Whether you're a clinician, a medical researcher, pharmaceutical industry leader, scientist, patient, or just someone here to see the presentations. You are helping people that once thought they would never get help. In the past, people felt, hopeless. There wasn't much research being done, even when I was younger. Like, I don't remember, much happening with that. There were no clinical trials, barely any fundraising, and now I'm seeing more and more people rally together because they see a glimpse of what is possible. We're excited about the progress being made. And as long as we're educated and given the right resources, we can get people genetically tested into clinical trials soon and receiving treatment. And I really can't wait for that day. So thank you.